Okay, our next part's going to be setting up the idle, the walk, the run for the character and all his different states. So this is going to be where we really start to pull in together the variables that we've set up here, as well as actually starting to use our velocity. So if you notice at the moment, we've been, like when we wanted to get something from here, we were very specific with getting a button down or getting an axis or getting something. Well, at this point, everything that we want is actually stored in velocity. At least the velocity.x is what we're going to be looking at for the moment. So let's go ahead and have the jump options down below. We'll have all of our idles and walks and runs up above here. Getting started with, let's go ahead and just start off with our first one. And for me, I'm going to just kind of create it off to the side, and once we're done, we'll tab it over. For this, let's call up our velocity. Now, what we want to do, we want to actually set our velocity.x. So we're not looking for the full vector 3, we're just looking for the first one. And we're going to say that if it's equal to 0, that we actually want it to play an idle animation. Alright, so for instance here, I could actually just go in here and say the animation play sprite. Well, let's go ahead and uncomment the first one here. We'll start to use this one. This is just going to be used as a quick copy and paste for down here. I want to say that if my velocity .x is at 0, that means that there's no movement on the horizontal controller. So if you were pushing a key, it would be movement. But if I have no push, I'm not pushing the D-pad any direction, that the velocity would be equal to 0. Okay, so if it is equal to 0, let's play just an animation sprite. We'll call up the animation sprite for idling to the right. And if I just save this, and we go up here and we play it, you'll notice that the character, once it plays, actually plays the animation. So for instance, as long as I'm not pushing a button, he's going to animate. Now if I push to the left or to the right, notice the animation stops. Okay, but if I let go of it, when it goes back to 0, it goes to here. Now, this is something that, just to kind of continue with this, is that something you may notice is that I don't have the ability to say, hey, I'm facing right, hey, I'm facing left. Alright, this is where our move direction needs to come into play, is that if I'm pushing the left arrow and then I stop, he should be at the left-hand idle state, not the right-hand idle state. Alright, so let's go ahead and stop on this one for a moment. Inside, back to our code, let's go ahead and let's see, we've got the velocity on this part. Let's go ahead and actually just copy this one, or you could just retype it here. I'm going to place in two options here. So we're going to say if if the velocity is x equal to 0, play this one. But if I want to play the other one, and the numbers I've just got already, so we'll go ahead and know that the second idle string is going to be on the second row, which will be 1 right here. If it is 0, play this one. Well, how do we define the difference? Well, we're going to store our move direction into here as well. We're going to make a check for it. Alright, so we could say if velocity x is equal to 0, and we'll say, and move direction is going to be equal to, we'll set this one to 0 for the right hand side. Let's go ahead and make a comment on that one so we don't forget. And then for the other one, we'll say that this one, if move direction is equal to 1, then he'll actually be facing the other. Oops, let me make sure that the 0 is going to be to the left, and the other one's to the right. So we'll do 1 and 0. There we go. Idle left and idle right. Okay, now those two, how do we find those variables? How do we actually know which direction the player was going, which way the player was went and then let go of the mouse or let go of the button? We need to make sure we're storing it somewhere. Alright, so let's go down to the bottom here. So outside of our checks for is grounded and is not grounded, we're just going to go down to the bottom where it's actually checking and applying the velocity and the controller movement. Let's go ahead and set up a velocity option here. We're going to say velocity x, if velocity x is less than 0. Alright, so the velocity, remember, we're getting the velocity based on the input get axis up here. So every time it changes, every time we go to the left or go to the right, this vector.x changes and it gets stored into velocity. So down here, at the moment it changes, it's going to tell me is it less than 0, and we'll do one greater than 0. Alright, so if it's less than 0, and let's go ahead and set up a option for it. Then we want to make our move direction. We're going to set the move direction to 1, actually to 0, because that'll let us know that we're going to the left. And then we'll do another one here, as if the velocity.x is greater than 0, that we can now have our move direction, and the move direction is going to equal 1. Alright. So again, this is just basically setting it up so that as we move with the axis on the horizontal, it stores it inside of here, and it gives us a move direction. Alright, so what we can do is go right down below here. Let's just do a quick print on this one. And we're just going to print move direction. Alright. So this will actually let us see inside the console whether or not it's changing for it. So go ahead and save this out, and we'll go back into the editor and push play. And it looks like it's going to say, let's see, we've got an issue at line, let's go back up to the top, line 36. Let's make sure we've got this set up right. There we go. Make sure we're actually watching this. It's going to be equal to, not just equals. Alright. Okay, so hopefully even like when I was typing this, if you happen to catch that beforehand, then that's great. You know, be sure that if you see something and you're like, hey, wait, he's not typing it right, type it in the right way. That way you don't get the errors afterwards. So we've got this, and it's storing the movement. So let's double check here. If we play. Alright, so once it drops in, I'm going to keep it from collapsing here. That way you just see the number updating. And inside of here, if I push the left arrow, it's going to turn to 0. And notice, all of a sudden, the character idles on the left-hand side. If I push the right arrow, my number changes to 1, and it also idles to the right-hand side. So it's actually storing the two directions for us. And notice, do you see the little bit of lag before it changes? This is actually because the velocity isn't 0. If it's above 0, it's actually going to be part of the movement. And once it hits 0, once it equals 0, then it actually changes the idle state to whatever current direction it was heading. Alright? So we now have a very useful but very simple system of storing our move direction for the player, which we can actually use at any point, meaning for the jump, for the run, for the walk, for the idle. All of those will now be able to use this, and we'll know which direction the player is facing. Alright, let's go ahead and get rid of our print statement here. And so again, we have our way to set up for velocity and for the direction they're facing. Let's go ahead and comment on that one. That way we just remember what we've got here. Get last move direction. And we'll just say this is going to be the left one. And then the move one. And we'll just say that we're going to set move direction to the left. And same thing for the right one. We'll just get last move direction on the right side, and then set move direction to the right. Okay. So that gets those for us. And actually, while we're down here, let's go ahead and just comment on these two, since they're pretty much going to be the same. They won't be changing. We're going to apply gravity here. And we're going to move the controller. Alright. And Again, something to keep in mind when you're doing these is that, at least for me, this is, it's all, everybody's going to be different on this, but what I tend to do is make sure that on the right-hand side I've got a column with the more the comment side. Sometimes you'll see a lot of people, they'll do code directly inside, like right above any of the lines of the code they write. They'll write the comment for it. It's good, but the only downside is it kind of doubles the size of code that you have, so you have more to have to scroll through. If you do it this way, then you can read it for just for each one for what it is. So if you're just someone who is just reading code only, then you can read it this way. If you're really needing to see what's going on, you can read just the comments and make sense from it. So either way is good to work with. Alright, so let's see, let's go ahead and go back to this one. Looks like we could actually bump this over to later down the road. So we have our velocity, we currently have our move direction. If our velocity is set to 0, we're applying the idle animation. So let's go ahead and start to apply the walk animation and the run animation. Alright. So let's see, right below the idle, let's go ahead and place this in. Also for these, we'll go ahead and just make some comments, is that on this, I'll just say animation to calling the sprite sheet. That'll work for it. And we could do it generic if you want, so we could place these. You could also spend a little extra time and actually on the numbers there, instead of actually having those as numbers, you could put them up as variable options, and so that through the inspector, somebody could actually just type in the numbers from there to change the animation frame. Alright, for this one though, let's see. We'll go ahead and set up the next one. Now for movement, all we've got to check for, since we're actually getting the right direction to move from here, all we actually have to check for now is the velocity speed. So for instance on this one, we'll just say if velocity and .x is going to be, for the first one, less than 0. So that way we're checking for left movement. Alright, so if this is set up for left movement, then what we want to just simply assign is that we want to say animation place animation sprite. So just like what we have up above. The animation count that we'll use though, we'll go ahead and just place this in here. Alright, so the animation count that we're going to use for the walking left is going to be 16, 16, 0, and then we'll just change this to 3, 10, and for the speed, we'll say 15. Alright, so it should be pretty close to what it needs for the animation speed on that part of it. This one, again, these are numbers just based off of the animation sprite sheet. When you look at it, you'll just be able to see, you just count down the rows and the columns, and it'll provide you with where the run walk animation should be. Alright, so now this one means that if the velocity is less than 0, meaning that the player is pushing down the left arrow key or A, or pushing left on the joystick, that the animation that's going to play for it is going to be the walk animation to the left. Alright, so let's go ahead and save this. Let's double check, see if it works. Alright, so if we push to the left, the player should actually be walking to the left. There we go. So we can push, player walks to the left. Alright. So that one works. Let's go ahead and do the other one here. So we'll go ahead and take what we currently have, which is, let's go ahead and make sure we define this. This is going to be walk left. Then we'll do another one, which is going to be walk right. I'm just going to copy and paste this one. Again, you may, when you get into the coding side, take the time, go ahead and write it out. The more times you write the words, the easier it is going to be able to remember to call them up. So say this one's going to be right up above it. So say walk right. Okay. Now, with that part, we just want to change up our walk right. The walk right's going to be, instead of on the column 3, it's actually just going to, row 3, it's going to be row 2. So we'll have those set up right there. And what we also need to do, if you notice, it automatically played a speed than when we pushed it over. If we actually want to have control of the speed, though, like from before, we were using a velocity.x was multiplying by itself times the walk speed. Well, we need to actually place that inside of here as well. So, for instance, we can do greater than 0 right there. We play it. He's going to walk left and right. So when it comes in, he'll be able to walk left, and he'll be able to walk right. And when you let go of the keyboard, or the joystick or anything, he'll automatically stop the direction he was at. He'll still face that direction, and he'll still play his animation. So walking this way, and he plays the right animation that way. So at this point, we've already got a very dynamic character. I mean, he's already able to look the right directions, turn the right directions, and be able to walk. Alright, but let's go ahead and control his walk speed a little bit closer than what we currently have. That way, when he goes to a run speed or any other ones, we're able to control each set of them. Alright, so if we go back to the walk, right above the animation sprite call right there, for the walking left, walking right, let's just call up the velocity. And velocity, we're just going to multiply the whole thing by the walk speed. Alright, so this is going to be the same thing we want to use inside of our walk right. So we'll call up the velocity again, just multiply it by the walk speed. Alright. And that's going to actually allow us to have that control that we want for it. So let's save this out. Again, we can double check with this one. We'll zoom out a little bit here since he'll be walking a little faster. Alright, so now he actually walks at the speed of our walk speed that we have defined. Okay, and he does have jump still. Okay. Alright, so that's going to give us a good walk left and right. It's going to give us a good idle left and right. Let's go ahead and add to this here. Before we add to it, let's go ahead and define this part of it. We'll just say move. We got on our left, so we'll say move left based on walk speed. And same thing for the next one. Where's that one at? Right here. And we'll do move right based on walk speed. Alright. So with those, we can just add to this one more time here. We've got our walk speed, but let's do a run speed. Now, run is going to be a little bit different because it's actually checking for one additional element. So for instance, on this one, we're saying that if the velocity dot x, and for us, what we want to look for is just we want to check for the velocity being less than and greater than 0. However, at the same time, we want to get a button input for it. So, for instance, on this one, we'll just say that it's going to be less than 0. We'll also say and what we're going to look for is an input and a get button. And the get button, we're actually going to have it where it's get button. Instead of a get button down, we need to make sure that the player is holding the button down in order to run while they're holding it down. So we'll use the fire one that we used before. Alright, so if the player is moving to the left and the player is pushing the button down, then we can actually allow the player to run faster than the walk speed. Alright, so with this one, we can actually increase it. We'll just say that it's now going to be velocity, so the velocity itself is going to be multiplied by the run speed. Alright, and if you recall, the run speed that we had here was going to be 2.0, the walk speed was 1.5. Okay, so that'll actually set us up for being able to walk to the side like that, and we can use the same thing, we'll just have them going the other direction as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and define this one. We're going to say run left, and this one will be run right. So, let's say if velocity is greater than 0 and the button's pushed down to be able to run, then the velocity run speed will be equal to that. Alright, and what we need to add to it, so we can actually see the difference, we'll add the animation play for the animation sprite. And this one, for the run left, we're actually looking at a different number. We're going to be looking at a 16, 16, and then for the row, it'll be set on 5. We'll do 16 on here for frames, and we'll do 24 frames a second so that it plays through it at the right speed for the amount of frames that we're calling up. Alright, let's go ahead and save this one. I'll copy it down here. Alright, so for the run right, we're going to have this one at row 4. And row 4 will have 16 frames as well, and we'll play that at 24 frames a second. Alright, so this will get us running to the left, running to the right as well. Let's save this out. We'll go back in here and push play. Alright, so you should be able to just hold the left and right arrow down to walk. If you hold shift or control, you'll be able to run. So notice now the player can run left and right. If you let go of the run button, then he goes back to the walk. If you let go of any of the buttons, he goes back to just a normal idle position. Alright. So now we've got a lot of really good control of the character. He's going to be able to do most of his motions right there. And you can tell when you're running and you're jumping. Notice one of the interesting things at this point is that when he jumps off the ground, the last frame that was part of the motion is the frame that holds for it. So he's kind of in a different pose each time when he's running. And we'll have it all fixed so that he'll have his own jump as well. Alright. So that's going to pretty much conclude the idle, the walk, and the run. The next thing that we'll look at after this point will be setting up for crouching and starting to fix the jump types.